Well, welcome everyone. We're continuing our mental health series, the SSI Spotlight on Mental Health Best Practices. My name's Brian Hainline, the NCAA Chief Medical Officer. So in this series so far, we've highlighted innovative programming such as mental health first aid for coaches, screening procedures, routine and emergency referral pathways, telehealth for mental health, and the role of inclusion in promoting mental health on the campus. Today, we're really going to be discussing a holistic programming that addresses student-athlete mental health on campus through the lens of University of Colorado, Colorado Springs, a Division II school, and specifically their Mountain Lion Strong program. So they're the recipient of an NCAA grant, and they use this grant to really build a very interesting holistic program using as a background guide the NCAA mental health best practices, and then really looking very specifically at the needs on their campuses. So we'll be going into considerable detail on that. We do have our two special guests from University of Colorado, Colorado Springs, Dr. Jess Kirby, who is assistant professor in health sciences at UCCS and program director for the Mountain Lion Strong program, and Keegan Schultz, former University of Colorado, Colorado Springs baseball student athlete, and he's currently a graduate student in health promotion and peer leader for Mountain Lion Strong. Just to refresh everyone, the purpose of these webinars, which are leading up to a newly edited and refurbished mental health best practices that we're going to be rolling out for the membership in January 2024. So the mental health best practices, which are legislated, so every member school is supposed to have mental health best practices programming in place, consistent with the document, the mental health best practices. So that was first published in 2016, last updated in 2020. It's endorsed by 25 of the leading medical, mental health, and scientific organizations in the country. And it really provides different ways that the membership can look at how they deliver best practices on their campus. Recall that this is all upon the recommendation of the Committee on Competitive Safeguards and Medical Aspects of Sports. And one of the reasons we're updating the best practices is because we're exploring further cultural sensitivity issues, the effect and impact of NIL on mental health, corruption and gambling in sport, and that impact on mental health, social media, which is often tied deeply with corruption in sport and gambling in sport, and concern about not prioritizing a culture of wellness and mental health care seeking. So that's our broad introduction. Let me actually turn to our guests now, Dr. Jess Kirby and Keegan Schultz, and maybe just introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about what you do at University of Colorado, Colorado Springs.
Yeah, really excited to be here today. I've been on campus teaching in a faculty role about the past 14 years and have worked a long time with collaborative wellness campus programs to really work on student psychological well-being.
Yeah, I came here as a graduate student to play baseball. I'm currently out of eligibility, and like Dr. Hainline said, I'm now working as a graduate assistant and peer mentor in the Mountain Lion Strong program.
Well, thanks so much for that. And maybe if you could, Jess and Keegan, just tell us how you first got this idea. You applied for a grant and how you really wanted to look at your campus and focus on mental health and specifically the needs that you saw in your athletics campus programming.
So I direct our graduate program in health promotion. So most of my research has been looking at improving psychological well-being of college students in physical activity and sports spaces. And we had done our Fitness Buddies program on campus for about 5 years, which gives students a free workout buddy, and seeing the power of that quality peer relationship in really reducing stress and anxiety among students. But at the same time, I saw on campus just how the gravity of the challenges mentally and socially that students were having after the pandemic. Doing my research in health promotion and sports psychology, I also knew the data on college student mental health, and it was really concerning. And so the grant opportunity with the NCAA Innovations Grant really gave us an opportunity to, what's the best case scenario of what we could develop. And given my background, I wanted to see if it was possible to develop a program that came in at step 0 of that preventative foundation building, culture building, environment of wellness, instead of reacting case by case to a lot of the crisis situations that had come up. And I knew from observation and from experience that our athletes on campus weren't really able to attend those other types of wellness programmings that were offered on campus due to how busy they were. And we're a lot less likely to reach out for help when they might need it the most, just due to a lot of the stigmas we still see in sport of, really trying to be tough and be a valuable part of our team.
And how did you reach out to Keegan initially, or how did that collaboration happen?
Yeah, so Keegan was kind of got to campus. Came to campus in the summer, actually. He was getting recruited with baseball, had eligibility left, was interested in our graduate program. And I was like, I just wrote this grant. I don't know if we will receive the funding, but if so, it'd be a really cool opportunity for you to come here as a graduate student and be involved. So it was really in the question mark phase when he got to campus, and it was a lot of trust on his part to be willing to be a leader in something when we didn't know, what it would be yet.
And Keegan, maybe walk us through when you first started working with Jess about this. I mean, what your thoughts were and how excited were you about getting involved in this?
Yeah, so like she said, when I came in the summer, it was kind of a question mark on what I really wanted to do, but I got a minor in psychology, and obviously baseball is a very mentally stringent game. And so when she came to me with this opportunity, I thought it would be an awesome experience for me to be able to kind of pass on some different information and resources to my teammates as well as different athletes here at UCCS.
So Justin, Keegan, before we get into the specifics of the programming, can you share with us when you had this idea, how did you build the momentum and get the buy-in across athletics that you were going to really take a comprehensive look at mental health, be very innovative on your campus? And so you're going to be sharing with the membership how that works. But what did you do at the front end to get the buy-in with the athletics director, with the coaches, with all the student athletes?
Yeah, absolutely. So when we started off the year, and I think it's so critical for any health promoting program, is we asked them what their needs were. So at the very beginning of the year, we surveyed the student athletes, we surveyed all the SAC leaders, we surveyed the coaches, the staff, and the administrators to what their greatest needs they saw, what were the greatest barriers and challenges they saw for student athletes, and what they would want to see in a program. Best case scenario, what types of resources would they want involved? And so we did that right at the beginning. Truthfully, getting the NCAA Innovations grant was really huge in momentum and kind of, just really allowing some momentum. Okay, our campus has this grant, and so we're going to really run with it. The second critical piece was we had full administrative support from our athletic directors from the very beginning. And so that really rolled down to the coaches that, this is going to be an athletics wide initiative, and that, everybody was all hands on deck. And then, really relying on the peer leaders to kind of spread the word as well.
So, surveys are so important, and I think they're really underutilized. So, if I receive a survey and it just sort of like pops up in my email, I may or may not do it. And what we're always looking for is to get, well, at least a 30% response, ideally more than 50%. And then we're hitting it out of the ballpark. So that's a baseball metaphor there, Keegan. But if we get over 60, 70%, but just maybe share with us how you kind of built the survey out and really made certain that everyone knew it was coming so you could get a good response rate. Maybe share what your response rate was.
We had an excellent response rate. It was probably up there in like the 70+%. And, being in research that's difficult working with people, it is the hardest to get those responses. So knowing that, I worked with Keegan and the other peer leaders to first develop the questions to be sure the survey wasn't too long. It was easily understood. They were asking the right questions. And then we just disseminated the survey a lot in person. So we did some introductory sessions with SAC and with the coaches. So we asked people to take the survey in person in real time, which really increases the response rate versus it coming in the email box. And then ask peer leaders like Keegan and some of our SAC leaders and other athletes to also share that and send it out to their teammates personally.
Yeah, I mean, 70%, that's, so for the membership, getting a 70% response rate is almost astronomical. So, and it sounds like what you were doing, Keegan and Jess, is the in-person surveys are so critically important. And then everyone knows that they're doing this together. And I think you probably get a sense from them that they believe they're being listened to. And so they're part of shaping the culture. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And the vast majority of the questions for the needs assessment were open-ended. So we also didn't want to steer or direct what we already kind of were thinking of for the program. So we left mostly open-ended questions so that we were sure not to miss anything that maybe we hadn't thought of yet.
So now walk us through. So you have these survey, maybe give us a taste of some of the questions of the survey, and then take us through the next steps, how you analyzed it and then built out your programming, which you're going to share with us.
Again, most of the questions were open-ended. So we said, for athletes, what do you perceive as the greatest challenges and barriers that impact you for your mental health, for your wellness? What types of resources do you really want to see implemented and put into place? And they gave some great ideas and gave us some ideas that we added immediately to our year's plan that we hadn't necessarily had specifically in the grant proposal. And so what we did and what we got from what are your greatest challenges was a huge variety of challenges. And so that really validated the use of a wellness, multidimensional wellness model because the challenges were across so many categories and topic areas. So the first thing we did to start the program was develop a student athlete specific wellness model, or wellness wheel as they're often referred to. We highlighted five specific dimensions of wellness and how those specifically apply to the health and success of student athletes. So just, tailored it a bit, focusing on social, physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual wellness. And we really center that in all that we do in all of our events and really keep that in mind so that we create balance and dimensionality in all of our programming.
And Keegan, let me ask this to you. Go back to your days when you were an active student athlete and thinking about or not thinking about mental health. What would it have been like for you as a student athlete for someone like Dr. Kirby or others to say, hey, we're going to do a survey on mental health. We want to try to improve mental health. I mean, would that have gotten your attention right away, or you would have said, okay, enough of this. I need to focus on what I need to do in baseball and academics?
No, I think it definitely would have caught my attention. I think it's good that the athletes now, and I certainly would have appreciated it, can see that the campus cares about them, that they want to know more about them as a person, not just as an athlete, as it's not just a transactional relationship between the athlete and administration and coaches and professors. It's more of a personal relationship, and they care about the more holistic well-being of the athlete and not just them as an athlete themselves.
Yeah. So I guess you're saying that personal touch, that personal reach, it impacts you because you say, hey, someone really cares and actually this is important to me, sort of thing.
Yeah, no doubt.
So just talk us through a little bit how the program operates. So who's involved and how it runs, your goals and so forth. Let's get into the nuts and bolts a little bit.
Yeah, so it's definitely an ambitious project for sure. And so knowing that, different student athletes are going to respond to different types of support. So we wanted to really create a holistic, multifaceted approach so that we have as many chances for athletes to interact with that positive impact as possible and not just a singular approach. So we kind of have like a web of offerings. And so operational wise, I serve as the program director, and I'm very proud and grateful to be able to lead an incredible team of students and athletes. So we have currently about 16 peer leaders that are student athletes, former student athletes, graduate assistants, and health promotion interns. And their passion, dedication, and time commitment that they pour in every single week absolutely makes the program a success. And so things that we offer are the QPR suicide prevention gatekeeper training. So that's the question, persuade, refer training. So we aim to train all of our coaches, graduate assistants, SAC members, and peer leaders, as well as administrators and athletic staff in that training, so that we're creating that wraparound support of a culture where we have people trained in asking the right questions and referring when those times of crisis do occur. And then on the wellness side, we're using that student athlete specific wellness wheel to do wellness education every semester with a progressive approach. So we're designing the program still actively to grow with the athletes from their freshman year through that healthy transition out of sport. So they're going to get a wellness education workshop every semester. We do make the wellness education workshops mandatory because as young, busy people, sometimes they just don't know what's good for them, especially in the earlier seasons of their athletic career. So we want them to get there and get the information, even if they feel like they're doing great in that moment and maybe feel like they don't need it right now. They're going to have it when they do need it. And then supplementally, we do the monthly social events. That was something that was asked for in the needs assessment. Is there somewhere we can have social events, we can meet other athletes, and we can just have fun? So the social events, we also offer coach education to be sure that our coaches are allies for the athletes in the things we're teaching, as well as we do the, I'm drawing a little bit of a blank thing, coaches education, as well as some of our more specific needs that athletes have asked for. So Keegan will talk a little bit about our injury support group that is fully led by athletes to support athletes experiencing injury and focus on that psychological return to sport, as well as this year we're adding a peer support group for our international athletes.
Wow. That's a lot. Can you maybe take a couple of minutes and help us understand what a suicide prevention programming is like?
Yeah, so we use the QPR training, which I'm a really big fan of because the idea is that it's gatekeeper training. So it's designed to be accessible and usable for anybody in the community. So you don't have to be a mental health professional or a professor or have any kind of credentials. It's especially valuable for peers. And we've seen it be implemented successfully on our campus in the past year. So it definitely works. And so it's a 90-minute training. So it's also not too hard to fit in the schedule. But you're teaching the question, persuade, refer model. So the one is getting comfortable with asking the question. If someone's just displaying the behavioral or situational risk signs of suicide, then we're getting comfortable with saying the word and asking the question. Are you thinking about hurting yourself? Are you thinking about, do you have thoughts of suicide? So it's asking the question and then persuading the individual in crisis to feel supported and allow you to walk that journey with them, to connect them hopefully directly to resources, or else confirm that they're safe in the short term until they can get to resources.
So it seems what you're doing, suicide prevention, everything else, it's really relying on this concept of peer support, maybe the buddy system. Sometimes we call it bystander intervention when it's a sort of formally implemented like that. But does that make sense? Am I in the right track there?
Yeah, and we're really trying to train not only peers, but stakeholders across all levels of athletics and campus. So it's wraparound support. So hopefully somewhere in the athlete's midst, if they experience that mental health crisis, there's someone they're comfortable with. So maybe it's a teammate, maybe it's a peer leader on Mountain Lion Strong that's not on their team because, they're worried about what their team might think. Maybe it's their coach, and maybe it's somebody in our sports medicine staff or our athletic directors. So we're trying to really create a culture of normalizing the conversations where we have lots of people trained, lots of people who are open to talking about it. And hopefully we really reduce any hesitation an athlete would have to ask for help when they really need it.
Yeah, I love that. I love the term normalizing the conversation. And that perhaps is the biggest barrier, just being afraid to intervene, to interact, to ask questions. And so now it becomes all normal. So I love that. Keegan, tell us more about your role and the impact you've seen in peer groups and how receptive have teammates and other student athletes been to this sort of peer mentoring?
Yeah, so my role as a grad assistant for Mountain Lion Strong is to help kind of develop and execute the program. Just because I have the experience of an athlete, and so I think my information is kind of valuable to speak towards what the athletes might want. And so I also am lucky enough to lead the injury support group, which is exactly that, a support group for athletes who have been injured in their sports and are working towards returning back to the field. And what we do there is kind of just start the conversation. We just talk about how they feel about their injury, how they feel about their rehabilitation, kind of maybe the worries they might have for when they return to the field. And then I kind of help guide some maybe mental health practices or some good strategies that might help them overcome those obstacles that they may face on their return to injury. So I think that's a really cool group, and it's really cool to be able to see the athletes kind of interact with each other, irrespective of the sport that they're in or the gender that they are or what grade they're in, and kind of just communicate the same, very similar obstacles that they're all facing together. So that's kind of the coolest thing that I've seen, and what I think we're doing a really good job with at Mountain Lion Strong is creating a really good community of support and togetherness throughout all the athletics, to where, like Dr. Jess said, maybe they aren't reaching out to somebody on their own team, but they feel comfortable enough to talk to a peer leader from somebody from another sport or another athletics team here at UCCS.
I really like that concept of working with the injured athlete. So, our research tells us that transition out of sport is perhaps the most vulnerable time for an athlete to develop mental health symptoms or mental health disorders, especially when it's a sudden transition. So a sudden transition, the most sudden usually comes from injury. And so I really commend you on that. So often when an athlete is injured, they're sort of by themselves, they're not still incorporated in team activities, and it can be a dangerous place. So are all of the injured athletes, you're working with all of them, and that's a concept that all the different athletic teams have built into?
Yeah, so right now we're currently trying to kind of spread the word a little bit more about the injury support group. Last year we probably had like 6 to 10 athletes come to each session, all at different times in their injury, all throughout different seasons. And like I said, it was really cool to just be able to see the athletes from different sports kind of mingle and talk about their injuries and be able to air out maybe what their thoughts and their feelings were towards that.
And I guess this is for both of you, Jess and Keegan, with this sort of peer mentoring and the peer support program. Does that complement other already established programs that you have in place on campus?
Yeah, so a lot of my research for the past 6 years, again, was with kind of the workout buddy program. And so we also have a lot of other peer-led health promotion education on campus. And so peer leadership and peer health education is a really highly evidence-based practice that we see very consistent positive results for across higher education, different types of disciplines, as well as promoting health among college students. And so I'd seen it, and it's kind of something where it's like, it's the simple idea that delivers really, really big, impactful results, right? It's the idea of a quality friend. And we kind of think of the stereotypical college experience being one where you have lots of fun and make lots of friends. But the truth of the matter is that technology is reducing our social connections and our quality peer relationships rapidly, which also weighs heavily on mental health. And so it's that simple idea of like re-engaging those relationships across campus, getting athletes out and developing those quality relationships with each other beyond just their teammates, that can be really powerful.
Yeah, when you talk about technology and social media, in some ways, and actually the Surgeon General, Vivek Murthy, has spoken to the Mental Health Advisory Group about this, and that was the most recent Surgeon General advisory. It was about you can be connected to millions of people on social media, but your human connection is actually diminished. And so it's good to hear you talk about that. Can you share with us any preliminary results that you've seen, and importantly, how the coaches have responded to this?
So we did an end of year survey last semester in May to gauge impact. And so it was, during the end of the year, so not quite as high of a response as the beginning of the year, but we still got a pretty robust sample. I would say about 35% of our student athletes responded to that survey. Very encouraging results, especially for a first year of just introducing a pilot program. It takes time to build that culture. So after just the first year, the majority of athletes that responded to the survey had a significant increase in their confidence to talk about mental health, to seek mental health resources, and a significant increase in their confidence to manage their own wellness across physical, social, emotional, and mental dimensions. In our open-ended responses, they also shared that they really loved the events. They wanted more of them. So more social events, more education events, as much as we really could offer them. They spoke that they had shifted their mindset a little bit to feel okay taking a mental health day off without feeling guilty. So we're really moving that stigma a little bit. That is extremely rewarding to hear. We heard that they were excited that they were able to develop these relationships with other athletes outside of their team, which was really exciting. And that some of the mental skills training, they had seen substantial, noticeable improvements in their athletic performance by implementing that mental skills training. I would say coach buy-in's been really excellent, and I have to give a lot of credit to our athletic directors for leading the charge. We had an introductory program meeting last August, and our executive athletic director, he said that this program isn't changing anything about our athletics department. It's really just reaffirming our program's values. And so that's huge because I didn't have to spend the energy going out and trying to sell the program coach by coach and team by team. We were really able to implement it across the department. And overall, we have an incredible staff of coaches at UCCS that they are very athlete focused. They want to support athlete mental health, and they're excited to have the support to not have to try to figure out how to do it themselves as a coaching staff, but have the support of a program to support the athletes outside of what they have in their team structure.
And you mentioned that, it takes time to change culture. I think it's very important for everyone to understand that when you're building out programming like this, you're not just talking about something happening in 3 months or a one and done. This is a 1, 2, 5, and even 10-year plan. It seems to me to change the culture, the perceived norms, what everyone feels should be happening around them. So how do you sustain this over time? What are your hopes for the program over time, and how you keep building on your success?
Yeah, I think 100% it will be successful. One, by the student athlete buy-in, right? Having athletes like Keegan, who are well-respected leaders on their team and on campus, the rest of the student athlete population is far more likely to be excited about, coming to a game night event or coming to an educational workshop to see their peers, teaching them things that are important and that they can directly relate to on a peer-to-peer level versus like a professor that they might have zero experience with, just talking kind of like in a normal class. So the peer leadership is absolutely important. I'm excited that the program is going to continue to be funded beyond the grant period. So we've had buy-in, commitment, and investment from our athletics department to keep funding the program, which is huge because we don't need a huge budget, but we do need some basic money, mostly for a lot of food to feed the athletes to get them, in the door a little bit. My goal for the program, I think, is twofold, or maybe three. Really building that culture where people are having those mental health conversations everywhere, and it's as normal as talking about the weather or talking about, stretching out their body. It's just as normal as it can be. The athletes don't feel alone and isolated, that they know they have people all around, and that they don't have that conversation with themselves of should I ask for help and what will people think of me? That they know it's normal, it's what we do, and everybody's going to support you along the way. Nobody's going to judge you. And then I think that wellness place, right? So what I see across mental health spaces is that we can never have enough counselors or mental health professionals if we only stay in a reactionary model, responding on a case-by-case basis to individual crisis. So building that wellness foundation to give the student athletes the agency and empower them with the skills to build their healthy foundation, so then they can go, reach their goals, reach their dreams, have support to do it, reach for the stars kind of goals. And that my goal is that we leave a positive legacy of health and wellness with the athletes so that they're even healthier, happier, and more successful when they leave here than when they arrived.
I just want to come back to that one point you made, that if we're always reactive, we may never have enough licensed mental health providers or other caretakers to deal with the issue. So That also is what the mental health advisory group had concluded. And in the new best practices coming out in January 2024, we actually moved creating an environment that it really allows and fosters mental health care seeking and promotes and develops wellness. That's going to be the first part of the best practices. And so they view that as foundational. You're saying the same thing. That's really foundational. You have to get the culture right, and then everything else flows from there. So what advice would you have, Jess, and also Keegan, for other schools that want to get started like this? Really creating a culture that supports mental health, that supports mental well-being. How would other schools go about doing this?
I think Jess has hit on it quite a bit. The peer leadership is a huge factor. It's been a great experience for me, and I think it's an opportunity for student athletes to get leadership experience, to be able to pass on what they're learning to their peers, to their teammates, to other teammates from other sports. And I think it's really great opportunity for people to just learn how to be leaders. I also think that it's good for the peers to hear from their other peers. It's easier to kind of talk to people that you feel like you're friends with, people like that you feel like that are having the same experiences as you. And so I think to be able to talk with somebody who's on the same level as you, somebody who's going through the same situations that you're going through at at the same time, you're all going through it right now. I think that's extremely valuable. And I think that's probably been one of the biggest things that has helped this program to be successful and will help other programs to be successful as well.
Well, staying on that, Keegan, what's your sense? I mean, just if you've been working with student athletes, because look, mental health is still not talked about a lot. There's still a bit of a stigma. But is your sense that if student athletes are really given the opportunity to be involved more in mental health and be in sort of a peer support system, a culture of wellness, do you think student athletes really want to do this and they're just waiting for the opportunity? Is that a fair way of looking at it?
I do. Yeah. I think that by creating a safe space where athletes feel comfortable enough to talk about these things, I think they are more actively speaking out about the issues that they're having or the issues that they may think they might have in the future. And I think it is really beginning to start the conversation about mental health and the effects that it has. One thing I will say is that we had our first social event a couple weeks ago, and we had the biggest turnout that we've had in the whole time that we've been doing this program. So it really speaks to the fact that the athletes that went through the program last year are now passing on that information to the new athletes this year, the transfers, the freshmen. They're telling them about it. They're bringing them out to the new events, and they're kind of, like you said, building a culture here where people want to be a part of that.
Well, thanks so much for that. And Jess, we'll let you have the last word, maybe just advice for other schools to really continue doing what you have really done so well.
Yeah, I would build off of what Keegan said, is to work with the athletes directly. They're smart. They're in it. They know what they need, what they want, what resonates with their cohort. So work with the athletes directly. Have that full administrative support. When an athletic administrative team can roll out a program top down, it reduces a lot of the time lag in momentum and culture building. And then I think find those interdisciplinary champions on campus. I think interdisciplinary connections outside of the athletics department are missed, and they're extremely valuable, right? You've got lots of experts on campus. You've got experts in mental health professions. You've got researchers and faculty who are doing the research and the work, in mental health and sports psychology and health promotion. Find those champions, kind of make that A team and coalesce that energy across campus to implement. And I think my biggest piece of advice for any campus discussing or on the fence is just start yesterday. This is so important that student athletes really want this type of programming. They're excited about it. It's going to have a huge impact. And even for the really, even for those Division I schools, that high performance expectation, this foundation of wellness, resilience, and mental skills, that is your ticket to those big athletic performances that is expected in a lot of those programs. So, this is not kind of extra or optional. It's actually going to be the thing that elevates the performance, but more importantly, the well-being of all the athletes involved.
Yeah, that's so important. So this really is for all divisions. So D1, 2, and 3, all athletes, no matter what level you're at. I was privileged recently. I was in a forum with our Surgeon General, Vivek Murthy, Naomi Osaka, a world famous tennis player, and Michael Phelps, the most decorated Olympian of all times. And they were all saying the same thing. This is for everyone. This is bottled up inside of us. This helps me as a human being, and it helps our performance. So we're all saying the same thing. Really want to thank the two of you for being here, Keegan Schultz and Dr. Jess Kirby. Great innovation at University of Colorado, Colorado Springs. I've seen some questions that have been typed in. Please feel free to type in more questions, and we're going to go and we're going to address them now. So thanks, everyone, and let's move to the questions now. Thank you.